the sentencing of the former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn has been put off for another 90 days. There'll be a status report filed in mid-March. But let me just walk you through what's happened in the last couple of hours. The federal judge in this case, Emmett Sullivan, began the proceeding by stating to the court, "I can't think of a day when the court has accepted a guilty plea from a defendant that is not guilty, and that is not going to start today."
Welcome back. Much of the mainstream media has been in a lather at the prospect that former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn may flip against his former boss, President Trump. Just look at some of these headlines. ABC News, Flynn's lawyer meets members of special counsel's team, raising specter of plea deal.
And in a very weird twist here, Donald Trump tweeted out Friday morning that he's glad Michael Flynn is seeking immunity in this witch hunt. This is what he needs. Let's take on the Dems and blah, blah, blah. Do you understand, Donald, what's happening here? He's not asking for immunity because he's going to take down the Democrats, buddy. He's coming after you.
It's noon on the West Coast, 3 o'clock in Washington, where it's official. Michael Flynn has flipped. Time National Security Advisor entering a plea deal and promising to tell all, including that a senior member of the Trump transition team told him to contact the Russians.
Major news in the Russian investigation.
Robert Mueller has charged
Lieutenant General Michael T. Flynn.
And the president himself learned of this when they read it in the news.
Official. Flynn telling associates he's prepared to testify against President Trump and his closest advisors for special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation.
The next president of the United States, right here.
According to a Flynn confidant, he's willing to say it was Trump himself, as president-elect, who directed him to reach out to Russian leaders about fighting ISIS. Reaction to the stunning development was swift.
Clearly, he was willing to lie about those contacts and lied to the FBI. And I'm anxious to hear from him a fuller explanation of who all directed him to have these contacts.
This is so significant. You're talking about someone's national security advisor, someone with a military background who pled guilty to lying to the FBI, to the federal government.
And I know everyone's cheering in here again. I give Democrats and liberals this moment.
Bob Mueller, the special counsel, is a diligent, methodical investigator, and this is simply another step along the way to uncover what happened here. And then today's news is just a dramatic step.
CBS News has learned Flynn was directed to make the first call by President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, described in court papers as a very senior member of the transition team. On December 22, 2016, Flynn called Kislyak to urge Russia to delay or defeat a United Nations resolution on Israeli settlement.
Larry Littman writes in the New York Times today, among other things, it seems that the President-elect Trump himself directed Mr. Flynn to make contact with the Russian. If Mr. Flynn testifies to this, ABC's Brian Ross is reporting that he will, it presents another impeachable offense along with the possible obstruction of justice. Even more, it brings the whole matter well outside the purview of the criminal courts into the province of a political scandal, indicating abuses of power arguably well beyond those in the Watergate and Iran-Contra affairs.
And so when you look at it, Michael Flynn had no option but to plead guilty to a much lesser charge. It's very likely that he's cooperating with the special counsel by sharing whatever he knows about Russia.
News. ABC News' Brian Ross is reporting Michael Flynn promised full cooperation to the Mueller team and is prepared to testify that as a candidate, Donald Trump directed him to make contact with the Russians. Yes! He goes to jail. He goes to jail. He goes to jail. Lock him up. Lock him up. On Friday's show, apparently I was guilty of premature evaluation.
The day President Trump's former national security advisor, one of his first real allies and friends in the campaign, publicly turned on him and agreed to cooperate with the Mueller-Russia investigation.
So tonight's news, which we've seen coming for most of the year, is that NBC News is reporting that Robert Mueller has gathered enough evidence to bring charges in the investigation of former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and his son. And it is unclear just how much legal trouble Michael Flynn's son is in.
It's Michael Flynn working with Special Prosecutor Bob Mueller, possibly flipping and turning on Donald Trump.
But you're about to see how it pretty clearly is not that. It's Robert Mueller effectively going after Trump and his administration for corruption.
Okay, if Donald Trump pardons anyone from his campaign or administration involved in the Russia investigation, he should be impeached immediately.
General Michael Flynn has already flipped, has already begun to offer testimony against the Trump regime to the authorities, and that the present flood of Kushner stories main lines directly back to Flynn, and that the Kushner crises may in effect be Flynn's sample.
Office is that puts criminal charges related to the Russia investigation literally across the hall from Donald Trump in the White House. Now,
to expect that the Donald Trump presidency, the survival of his presidency itself, is in jeopardy. Don't know what the chances are of that, but they're significant because we now have, if in fact Michael Flynn is prepared to tell prosecutors that Donald Trump directed him as a candidate to talk to the Russians, the whole picture of interaction between candidate Trump and the Russians is coming into clearer focus with the meetings that we've discussed previously, the Russian interference with the election, the Flynn conversation with Kislyak about sanctions and trying to work that situation out. This is